Hi guys, welcome back to My Opinion. I hope all of you are ready to kick off March with a new episode of Maya's Monday Motivation. I know that we have not had a lot of episodes during February, and I still appreciate you guys supporting me and listening to the few episodes that I did put out, especially the episode that I put out right after Valentine's Day with my husband, talking about love in the workplace and also just talking about our story a little bit. I know you guys always ask me questions, so if you haven't listened to that, please check out that special edition. And for those of you that follow me on social media, especially Instagram, you know that I have been so sick, so I came back. I was able to record the special edition with my husband that I promised you guys, and unfortunately lost my voice again and had a relapse. I've had the flu and pneumonia on top of it, and it's been really tough. So thank you so much for your sweet messages and comments and support and still listening to the episodes that I've been able to put out. I really appreciate you guys. And I know I've promised that I'm going live, and I will go live next week, and I will announce that time, but I do have to preserve my voice as much as possible. But we are going to kick off March, and we're kicking it back off with Maya's Monday Motivation. And our first topic, like I mentioned at the end of Jackson and I's special edition, is going to be comparison. So I'm going to be talking about comparison on the theme of leadership and on the theme of women and empowerment, because I truly feel that comparison is the thief of joy. And I feel that support and love and compassion and understanding is the food and source of the opposite, of just excelling and doing so well in life. And so I think it's important that we do discuss comparison after talking about our who, what, when, where, why. Once we really understand who we are, comparing ourselves is one of the worst things we can do. It's really detrimental to who we are as a person. But taking it a step further, as a leader, it's detrimental to your team, to the individuals on your team, and as a mentor, comparing is just something you never want to do. And in toxic places that I've been, it's been an epidemic and something that happens. And I've talked about this on previous casts. Focusing on individuals' strengths will result in much stronger results, for lack of a better term, than focusing on what they are not doing well and really honing in on what they do well. You will have people on your team that are really strong relationship builders. You will have people on your team that are really strong operationally. You will have people on your team that are always just there early on time and ready to go and will do whatever it takes. They all have different strengths. Some people are really organized. There's so many different strengths that you can have, and really honing in on those are so key instead of spending our time comparing. Because we naturally, especially women, do that to ourselves. And when we spend the time to go through and understand our who, our when, our where, our what, our why, all of that, that starts to diminish. Because we realize that the only person we should compare ourselves to is who we were yesterday, who we were a year ago, who we were 5 years ago. And I talked about this on previous podcasts. Really look at that, reflect back on that when you're ready to, when you've gone through the journey. But I'm talking about comparison today because that is something that I struggled with personally. And I know every woman listening to this has struggled with that as well. And a lot of it has to do with what we see on social media, what we are told when we are younger, what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to go to college. We're supposed to get married or engaged or have children. We should have a good job. We should make a good income. We should. And I think you guys know how I feel about the word should. It's like a dirty word. It should be like a 4-letter word. All these expectations. And so when we see women or others achieving those milestones before us or what we think we should be achieving, we start to compare ourselves. So that's already going on in your personal life. So when you have a mentor, typically it's your supervisor, your boss, Not always. You have other mentors as well. I do. I have several. But your boss should be a positive mentor. And I'm saying should. I'm saying the dirty word. But I would hope that your boss, I should say, would be a positive mentor and influence for you. But if that individual is also comparing you to people on your team, then that becomes a toxic work environment. So how can you be a better leader? How can you avoid comparison? And how can you take that off of your team? How can you take that negative? I think comparison is such a negative thing. Again, I really do believe, I know this is not, I never talk about anything revolutionary, I think, on this podcast, like the actual concept. I like to just take it a step further. I do believe comparison is the thief of joy. I am guilty of it. So, for example, I spent a lot of time comparing myself, not so much in my personal life. And I've talked about that before as well. I never really cared when I got married and or if I ever had children. I never really cared about those things. I had these milestones that I really wanted to hit. I had to buy a house by this age. I had to become a director or do these things by a certain age. I had to make 6 figures by a certain age. I had to do all these things. And as I told you guys before, I woke up and said, why am I putting all, why? It's because of comparison. And also I was told through comparison, through comparing that these are things that I should be doing, I should be accomplishing, instead of really understanding what are my strengths, what am I good at, and how can I be better than I was yesterday, a year ago, 5 years ago. So I do fully believe, not an earth-shattering concept, but comparison is the thief of joy. But the support that you give women, the assistance that you can give them, and the mentoring, that is truly the food and the source that joy comes from. That's where that comes from. So that's how you combat that. So how do you do that as a leader? Well, first you have to stop comparing yourself to others. That's step one. Go through this journey yourself and really make sure that you have overcome that and you are very confident in who you are as a person and you're not spending that time comparing yourself to anyone else besides who you were yesterday, a month ago, a year ago. I had to learn that lesson the hard way because I continued to compare myself. And it was sometimes to celebrities or sometimes to people I would just see on Instagram or people I would see. I'm much more guilty. I think it's because I'm business driven. I'm much more guilty about comparing myself to people who were in my field. And that always backfired because I would succeed in different ways, or we're all meant to succeed at different times in different ways in different things. And once you learn to accept that, that's why I love going through the W's, it really just changes your life and you start to embrace those little wins and then you have these big wins and you really understand where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there, why you're there, your purpose, all of those things. As a leader, you need to be there first and you need to be in that mindset first. That's the first step. And you guys know I love my steps. So the first step is making sure you eliminate comparison in your life. You are only competing against one person in your life, and that is you. And you will hear a lot of people talk about this. A lot of really successful people talk about this. It's so funny to me, and this is a personal experience for me over and over and over again. I never really get something until I get it myself and I go through it myself. Someone can tell me something over and over again. It's the stubborn side that I have. And my husband always tells me this too. He's like, you're so stubborn. And I am. Now I'm willing to come back and say, yes, you were right, to him and to other people. But I really have to experience things myself to say, you know what? Yes, absolutely. I should not have been comparing myself. I am in competition with myself. And there was a long time where I was telling myself that was true because I wanted to believe that. But I was comparing myself, even if it was subconscious, because I wasn't doing the work. I wasn't doing the mindset work, which we'll talk about on another podcast. I wasn't really diving into my W's, wasn't really finding my purpose and digging into myself. Once I went through all of that, I was able to be a better mentor. So after that, my next step, then going into teams and leading teams, and this is the step for those of you who are leaders or want to be better leaders or will become leaders one day, wherever you are in your leadership process, then it's looking at your teams and never, ever, ever focusing on comparison between them. Because especially women, I know a lot of you probably have men on your team too, but I feel like everybody goes through this. Women are already all day long looking at Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, just everything coming at you and comparing. People tend to only put positive things on social media. Yes, there's negative things on social media as well, or things about hardship, but what we tend to forget is we don't see the other side, right? And we don't see everything. That person is trying to be a better person than we hope at least, than they were yesterday or a week ago. And I feel like we're moving into this time where women are starting to, or it's a movement at least, women are starting to embrace who they are and accept who they are. And we as leaders need to follow that movement because it's so important. So comparing and comparison within a leadership role is so toxic. I have been in many leadership roles where I have had my supervisor sit down with me and go through my team and literally go through and compare. Well, this particular sales, you guys know I've been in sales for a long time, so this sales rep does really, really well and is better than this one at this and does this and this very well. This sales rep is prettier than this sales rep, and this sales rep has better numbers, but I feel like this sales rep speaks better. Just we'll compare and compare and compare. And that was a huge wake-up call for me. This was not an isolated experience. This happened at several jobs I've had in my career where people have compared, or my supervisor has compared, or I've been in executive leadership meetings where we have talked about comparison between my direct reports, or even not even the women that were reporting to me, but people within the office, and comparing different things that did not matter. And back to my point about every single person needs to be focused on the fact that they need to be better than they were yesterday. Also, we need to focus on the strengths of every individual because there's a reason they're on your team. And if they're the right fit for your team, you've already been through all those exercises for them and they're still there, then you focus on those strengths, and any weaknesses that they have, they will start to rise up and rise to the occasion on those weaknesses because you're focusing on their strengths. I feel very passionately about that, and I think I should do a whole podcast on that. But when you're using comparison, it's deadly and it's toxic. So I'll use one example. In a specific role that I had, I've led more teams with a lot of women. You guys know this from listening to me. Last couple teams I've led have been predominantly women. Even when I led my team at David's, it was over 100 women. I think there were maybe 2 or 3 guys. It's just how it was. This particular example that sticks out to me, I remember being in an executive meeting, and just a couple of us, and I'm talking to my supervisor just about the team, giving a breakdown, and there's comparison happening. And we're talking about the strongest sales rep, the characteristics of that sales rep, and why that sales rep is doing very well. But this particular leader could not understand why this other sales rep, who had not been performing well, was very operational, was not the cookie cutter sales rep who you would typically think would just be that go-getter, go after sales, not care so much about the operations, just jump in and we'll take care of that, our CRM later, all that kind of stuff, was now performing almost at the same level. There was a lot of comparing going on. Well, how can she do this? How can she be sending her emails on time, entering her CRM information, different things that she had to do, and then comparing it to this other sales rep, who the other sales rep had been consistently performing, and now this one. And it's apples to oranges because there are strengths in each person and they're on their own journey, even at work. So compare, even in that environment, even though they didn't know that comparison was going on, because as a leader, it's your job to protect them from that. And I feel very strongly about that because, again, you are going through so much toxic energy every day and pressure and the comparison that we need to get over and not feel that we need to put on ourselves and feel that we need to compare. And then when it's happening in the workplace, as a leader, you protect your team from that. I defended these women constantly in several roles. I always have to give a breakdown, right? But in that specific situation, I did have to explain what was happening and why the evolution had happened with this very operationally sound young lady and why she had started to succeed. No two people learn exactly the same. We can kind of all fall into different buckets, but there were different light bulb moments for each one of them, and they each had weaknesses and strengths. Now, the other young lady, who was an exceptional salesperson, came out of the gate making her goals, exceeding her goals. Operations were not great, but I would never sit there and compare her to the other one. What did I focus on with her? Her sales, and pushed her with her sales, because as her sales continue to increase, what happens is your operations have to increase and your skill set with operations have to increase, or you're not going to continue to do well with sales. It's a natural progression. So when I continue to focus on the positive there, I could have sat there and compared her to our most operationally sound person. I could have done that, but that is completely negative and would never have achieved a positive result. I focused on how strong her sales skills were and how she shoots for the stars and she reaches way past them. She doesn't shoot for the stars and hit the moon. No. She went way past them and found another galaxy. As her sales just continue to blow up, it forces you to then become good at operations because you have to get organized. On the flip side, with my really operationally sound young lady who was not really making goal, not really there yet, she needed coaching and understanding and to see the possibilities and understand how sales, the mechanics worked, and understand it in an operational way. So I honed in on her operational skill set. And then she started making her goals, not only making her goals, exceeding them. But if I had sat there and compared either one to each other, we would be sitting here having a totally different conversation. Comparison is the thief of joy. We are all different. We all have different skill sets. It is so important as a mentor and leader that we highlight everybody's strengths. I think it's also great to have peer-to-peer engagement. That is something that I have done with all of my teams as well in a positive way. I have never asked somebody who, and we've brought this up before too, that's maybe the person that's, it's their time and on the way out to do this, but those who are very operationally sound, I'll have them come onto our group call and talk about what works for them. Someone who is great at prospecting, I'll have them come on and talk about that. But I do it in a way that's very inclusive, and I like to make sure that everybody has a topic because it's so important, once again, that this is not something that becomes about comparison. It's about focusing on everybody's strengths instead of comparing. We each bring something to the table in every single team. That's what makes a team, and that's what makes a team great, and that's what makes you a great leader when you are able to highlight everybody's strengths instead of comparing who might be better at what the individual job is. No two people are going to do the same job the same way. So focus on their strengths and not compare how one person is doing something and then that's exactly how it should be done. We would never have any change. We would never have any innovation in this world if that's what we did. And that's why comparison is so dangerous and I think such an important topic. And I think I actually did end up spending a lot of time talking about focusing on strengths in the workplace and really focusing on that with your team, which is fine. I think it's hand in hand with comparison. we're up against it every day, especially as women. I think when we eliminate comparison in a work environment, in the team environment, and we focus on inclusivity instead of comparing, it creates such a healthy environment and such a strong team. We need that as women. We need a place where we can feel like we're all a part of something, and it needs to be positive because we're all good and talented at something, and we're all striving to be better than yesterday or last week. And that's one of my favorite things. So it's always important to me too on my teams that I have a one-on-one every single week. It does not matter how small or large my team is. I have a one-on-one every single week with my team members. During that time, we talk about them. We talk about who they were last week, what they've accomplished, where they're going the following week. We are only talking about her. We are only comparing her numbers, who she is. I'm not saying a little competition isn't healthy, right? I mean, if you're in the sales environment, I've always wanted to be number one. I've always wanted to be the top seller. That's just who I am. I'm competitive. But it does not mean that you can't be supportive of the people around you. But on these one-on-one calls and these individual calls, it's so important to me that I focus on the needs of the individual that I'm talking to and how they can be better than they were a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and where they're going. We don't talk about anybody else. The only person that you should compare yourself to from a day ago, a week ago, is yourself. And that's my opinion. Thank you guys so much for listening to episode 10 of Maya's Monday Motivation, talking about comparison, but I guess we did talk quite a bit about strengths and focusing on strengths with your team, and that brings a lot of positivity. You guys know where to follow me on Instagram. It's at Maya Roffler, or you can now follow my own podcast page at My Opinion Podcast. And of course on Facebook as well at My Opinion Podcast. I have just done a complete overhaul of my own website as well, which will be launching this week, which is really great. Super easy to find. I'll have a coordinating blog on there again. It's really great. Super excited. Again, easy, myopinionpodcast.com. Please send me your messages, any feedback, and I'll be back next week with Maya's Monday Motivation on My Opinion. Thank you so much for listening.